Welcome to today's Explainer. Get ready because we're journeying to a place known as the home of the winds. We're talking about the Philippines' smallest, northernmost, and honestly, arguably its most breathtaking province, Batanes. If you think you already know exactly what a tropical island looks like, well, prepare to have those expectations completely rewritten.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you picture dramatic, rolling green hills or rugged, windswept coastlines, your mind probably jumps straight to New Zealand or maybe Scotland, right? But take a look at that other landscape. That is actually the untouched, majestic, northernmost tip of the Philippines. It's a brilliant visual contrast that literally defies every single stereotype you might have of a typical Southeast Asian getaway. To really grasp the scale and geography of this remote province, you've got to keep the number 10 in mind. Batanes isn't just one big continuous landmass, it's actually made up of 10 separate islands, completely scattered across some incredibly treacherous, deep blue waters, right where the Pacific Ocean collides with the intense currents of the West Philippine Sea. But here's where the story gets really fascinating. Out of those 10 scattered islands, only 3 are actually inhabited. And that perfectly sets the stage for our epic geographical progression today, because we're going to move from the more accessible mainlands right out to the absolute edges of the frontier.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll hit Batan, the main gateway. Second, Sabtang, the cultural heart. Third, Itbayat, the wild frontier. Fourth, we'll look at their resilient Ivatan culture. And finally, we'll wrap up with an essential travel guide.
Let's move to our first stop and see how this builds. Section 1. Batan, the main gateway. Since it's home to the capital city of Bosco, Batan naturally contains the vast majority of the province's attractions. And man, the contrast packed into just this one single island is incredible. Up in the north, you've got this towering 1,517-meter dormant volcano called Mount Uriah, and right below it is Velugan Boulder Beach, where the entire shoreline is made up of these massive, ancient volcanic boulders instead of sand. You've also got sweeping sunset views from the Bosco Lighthouse and the super lush Viang rolling hills. But then you head down to South Batan, and it offers a totally different vibe. This is where you'll find serene, golden-hour sunsets at the cliffside Chawa View Deck, the secluded turquoise waters of Hamaran Blue Lagoon, and some truly incredible history, like the 1887 House of Dakay, which is actually the oldest surviving traditional stone house in the area.
Now, what's really interesting about this is when you look out over the endless green pastures and grazing cows of Rakua Payaman, which people often call the Marlborough Hills, you'll notice these intricate networks of stone and shrub walls crisscrossing all over the farmland. These are known as living, and they aren't just there to look pretty. They act as traditional windbreaks against the region's notoriously fierce gales, while also doubling as property boundaries. It's just a brilliant, highly functional piece of agricultural engineering.
Also down in South Batan, specifically in the town of Ivana, is the Honesty Coffee Shop. And this is exactly what it sounds like, an entirely unmanned store where customers pay on a strict honor system. It stands as a living, breathing symbol of Ivatan integrity. It kind of makes you wonder, right? If you were visiting today, would you have the discipline to respect this unique, unmonitored cultural landmark? It really is a beautiful reflection of local values.
Moving right along across the waves. Section 2. Sabtang, the cultural heart. A quick 30-minute boat ride from Ivana brings us over to Sabtang, and wow, it is truly a feast for the eyes. This rural, rugged island is actually honored as a UNESCO tentative site. First, you've got the Chamatad Tinyan viewpoint, which is often called the mini Marlborough Hills, featuring these jaw-dropping cliffs that plunge vertically right into the sea. Then there are the Savadug and Chavayan villages. Walking through these quiet lanes of traditional Kogan-roofed stone houses feels like you're completely frozen in time. Oh, and you can't miss Morong Beach, with its creamy white sands and the iconic Aha limestone arch, which has been naturally sculpted over millennia by those fierce winds and crashing waves. And you can take all of this in from the striking Sabtang Lighthouse with its massive 360-degree ocean views.
But now, I've got to ask you something. Are you adventurous enough for the wild frontier? We've explored the accessible main islands, but are you truly ready to leave all that behind and face the extreme, remote edge of the province?
Let's find out. Section 3. Itbayat, the wild frontier.
All right, consider this a friendly warning. Going to Itbayat requires some very careful planning. It takes a solid 2 to 3 days to properly explore, and it is strictly for adventurous travelers. And this brilliantly illustrates why. Itbayat is completely ringed by cliffs that are 20 to 70 feet high. There is literally no proper shoreline or beach to land a boat on. To even get there, you either have to take a thrilling 12-minute flight from Basco or a grueling 4-hour ride on a traditional Filoa boat, which is totally at the mercy of the weather. Once you finally arrive, you're navigating massive coastal boulders and these incredibly unique boat-shaped stone houses. If you're up for it, you can hike Mount Raposa and actually see all the way to Taiwan on a clear day, or explore Tarongan Cave, which is this amazing archaeological site full of ancient human remains. It is sheer, unadulterated, rugged isolation.
Which brings us to our next stop, Section 4, the resilient Ivatan culture.
Let's gracefully pivot away from these geographical extremes for a second and talk about the incredible people who actually survive and thrive out here, the Ivatans. Everything about their culture is a direct, remarkably resilient response to this harsh, wind-battered environment. I mean, their traditional houses are engineered with incredibly thick limestone walls and Kogan grass roofs that are literally designed to survive 200-kilometer-per-hour typhoons. And remember those treacherous island crossings? They handle them using the Filoa, a highly specialized traditional outrigger boat. Even the local cuisine is inventive and robust. You've got uvid, which are these unique banana pith meatballs, luhanes, a traditional slow-cooked pork, and dibang, or flying fish, served up with warm turmeric supras rice. The Ivatans haven't just settled in the home of the winds, they have absolutely mastered living in it.
All right, let's bring it back down to earth. Section 5, Essential Travel Guide.
So let's look at the practical realities of how you can actually visit this frontier safely. So the crucial point here is choosing exactly when to go. The absolute best time to visit is during the peak dry season, from March to May. This is when you're going to get those sunny, calm seas that are just perfect for island hopping. Alternatively, November to February is cool, dry, and fantastic for dramatic photography. On the flip side, you absolutely must avoid the June to October typhoon season. Trust me on this. During those months, you're facing rough seas, hazardous conditions, and frequent flight cancellations that could completely ruin your trip. When it comes to logistics, there are a few strict rules you need to be aware of. First off, there are absolutely no ferries from mainland Luzon. The ocean currents are just way too extreme. So, you have to fly. It's about a 1-hour flight from Manila or Clark to Basco Airport via airlines like PAL, Cebu Pacific, or AirAsia. Second, independent exploration is heavily restricted to preserve the environment and the culture. You are required to hire certified tricycle guides, which will run you about 1,500 pesos a day, or use accredited van guides. And you've got to stick to the standard tour routes, like the North Batan, South Batan, and Sabtang day tours, to ensure this fragile ecosystem stays perfectly intact.
Finally, keep these essential reminders in your back pocket. You absolutely must respect local customs, which means always asking for permission before photographing people or walking into traditional villages. You also need to practice a strict leave-no-trace policy. Batanes' ecosystem is fiercely protected, as it should be. And importantly, pack layers. I know it's the tropical Philippines, but the home of the winds gets really strong breezes, and temperatures hover around 20 to 28 degrees Celsius year-round. It honestly stays pretty chilly, even in the middle of summer. Oh, and since it's a super remote spot, make sure you book those flights and accommodations early because they sell out incredibly fast during peak season.
As we've seen, Batanes actively restricts independent travel to protect its fragile ecosystem. And that leaves us with a really critical question. How can we ensure that our desire to explore doesn't end up destroying the untouched paradises we seek in the first place? It's a vital question about ecotourism and our own personal responsibilities as travelers, and it's something everyone should reflect deeply on before stepping foot into such a pristine environment. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep exploring respectfully.